Please don't move. Weekly World News, as we mentioned yesterday, a mouthpiece of the intelligence services, as are similar tabloid papers on the other side of the curtain. In my opinion, is a very important source of information about secret government projects. This is the paper that doesn't talk much about soap operas and royal romances or perturbations in the frequency of certain, how should I say, royal couples. It talks more about secret technology and paranormal phenomena that, in my opinion, exist many times over the scope of the presentation in the paper. Of the only two topics that I found debunked in a tabloid newspaper, and I repeat, it's the very words seems very funny, the very expression, something debunked in a tabloid paper. Tabloid papers by default do not debunk anything. On the contrary, the crazier the better, the more papers they would sell. The first story was the story about the Canadian author, I forgot the name, who wrote the book Other Losses, about the 3 million Wehrmacht and SS soldiers that were put in the German concentration camps by Eisenhower. And in 3 years, from 45 to 48, 1 million died out of these 3 million. According to the book. I have not been in these camps, I have not read the book, but I'm just following the article in the paper. Relief trains with food coming from Switzerland were returned at the gates of the camps, which speeded the death of the soldiers. 1 in 3 died. This was a story that was viciously debunked in the paper. For obvious reasons. If there is some merit to that, obviously, that's quite a disturbing story for the official, well, how should I say, for the secret American government. The other story that was debunked was a story about German astronauts that were launched in 1943. And immediately a big red light flashed in my mind, and I dug into my files. Could it be that they really sent some astronauts, and because rumors about that started leaking out, now they are quickly doing a mopping up operation? So in my files, I found, Gary, would you please just lift the back end of it so that we can see the top of the rocket. This is the giant 2-stage ICBM, the America rocket. This on top is a V1 rocket, a V2 rocket with specially made delta wing stabilizers, which is sitting inside the giant first stage. This is the America rocket. We can see a single engine. Well into the 80s, the Russians could not make such a large engine, so their Vostok rockets, the Vostok first stage, has 5 stages by 4, 20 smaller engines, a battery, a cluster of 20 smaller liquid fuel engines, because the Russians could not master the alloys and the production of such a giant combustion chamber and nozzle, such a giant, basically, rocket engine. The rumor says that 4 of these rockets were fired at the East Coast. In their altitude, they would reach 3,050 kilometers, which is 3.5 times the altitude of the Vostoks, the Geminis, and the Mercury space flights. So this is definitely a suborbital space flight. It would qualify for astronauts' wings from NASA if it was done today. And the rumor is that the V2s on top of the first stage, this is the A9, A10 combination. A9 is the first stage, it's a giant V2, 10 stories tall. The normal V2 is about 3 stories tall. The V2 plus the first stage, the whole America rocket was 10 stories tall, which is an incredible achievement. Half a century ago, 1940, basically in late 40s. And the rumor is that 4 main wing versions of the V-2 sitting on top of the A-9 rocket were fired at the East Coast. So here is one account of German space flights done with rockets. And this is a drawing of the rocket. In the first version, they had a slightly swept wings, very similar to the Messerschmitt 262 turbojet plane wings. And we can see the crew compartment. Actually, it's a solo cabin for one astronaut on board. I've discovered photographs of the German spacesuit used in the flights, and a careful examination reveals that it's a full-fledged, full-pressure spacesuit because the gloves are attached with a pressurized seal here, and the other glove here. This is a side photograph of the spacesuit. Again, we see the seal of the gloves. Quite well, very good, how should I say, transparency. The first Russian and Mercury spacesuits had only one little kind of a windshield in front. This is more of the Apollo type spacesuits where the whole, almost all of the helmet is transparent. Although riveted here, still this is quite an achievement for 1944. Then I discovered drawings of the rocket-propelled saucers. These were 4 rocket engines, outboard engines, spinning the craft around. Actually, the outermost section of the craft was spinning around. These were standard issue V2 rockets or rocket engines, or maybe some of the other. They had about 120 models of different rocket engines, solid fuel, liquid fuel, and so on. Definitely no shortage in their arsenal. By spinning the fuel tanks inside this movable ring, the fuel also was losing its weight. So this craft had definitely an exo-atmospheric capability, an orbital capability, and probably the bigger models were able to go even beyond the Earth's orbit. And this is the best shot of the spacesuit. We see the oxygen hose getting not into the helmet but into the body of the pilot, which means that this is a full pressure spacesuit and the whole body is pressurized, not just the helmet, leaving the remaining body the way the G suits are made for the pilots today. Only the helmet is under pressure and the rest of the body is tied with a suit with rubber strings that would keep the suit very tight, imitating and compensating for the lacking atmospheric pressure. Later on, I discovered in my drawings the first candidate for an exo-atmospheric craft was a drawing by a Schriever saucer, a giant saucer made by Schriever. And I was astonished when I read the dimensions here. The 3 legs of the craft, and the 4 legs coming from underneath, were 15 meters tall, 45 feet tall, which is about 5-story building tall. The craft itself was 10-story tall. And the diameter, 30 meters or 90 feet. And the diameter of the craft was 60 meters, which is 180 to 100 feet. This is a football field-sized dreadnought. It was powered by gas turbines running on fuel and oxygen that was stored in 2 reservoirs that were basically donut-shaped hollow pipes around the circumference of the craft. Probably the oxidizer is more involved than the fuel, as with the normal rockets. That's why one of the fuel tanks is bigger in diameter than the other one. And the fuel from here would power these turbines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 turbines. The exhaust gases from the turbines were exiting at the periphery of the craft. The load of these turbines were high-frequency electric generators, which means that probably this was a spinning magnetic field craft that had no moving mechanical parts other than the turbine generators inside. Nothing else was spinning from the hull.